Hello everyone, this is the Interim of YouTube Masterclass. This is a class taught for Coursera. That you can get credits at Harvard, yes. In cinema, yes, only to the attitude that it's can be used as a course that is taken as aside from a major, which you can major in cinema at USC, so these courses could come in handy. At least one. You got to talk with your course counselor about what courses are the ones you need to take. And this is through Coursera. You can watch all the videos. So far we've taught 4 classes, counting summer class last year. And we're coming up on spring semester. And, it's early in the morning. I know everybody's tired. Everybody's like still recovering from last semester. I know that I had a few things to say in the interim that were interesting about myself, but I can't brag forever. There's no point. Anyway, it's not like I may be this serious film guy and into like strategies about how we can uncover texts delicately so that we can see the way they're mixed together from all the mixed media that's in a single movie, between sound and image, freeze frames and reverse frames, and all the techniques you can use on cinema to make it look differently from scene to scene as the images move forward as they're shown to do. But they could be going backwards, but they'd still be going forward to go backward. It's really hard to explain. Too early in the morning to explain that. Right now, I'm not actually teaching a class. I'm just getting a feel for the master class, and we're actually still insightful about what we teach. In that, film criticism was a course that covered almost all the movies that you could think of, really, in terms of what you'd like to talk about, in terms of why you like a movie or not. For instance, you get a movie like 400 Blows, and you just go through it. You're like, well, first of all, there's all those handheld cameras and, angles from the kid's point of view. And then, it's like got these 2 shots, and one shot's the kids going around the city and having a good time. And then they get on that ride, and the ride starts going by, and you see these kids up, stuck to the wall on these like rides in the carnival, and they're going around. And it's an amazing scene, because you go from the confines of their house where they're like in trouble or something's gone wrong, and then they got kicked out of school for the day because something went wrong at school, and then the next thing you know, they're wandering the town, and then that he steals this like type, what is it? He steals some like keyboard, like one of these, like a typewriter. He steals the typewriter of one of the kids in 400 Blows, and then the next thing you know, he's getting arrested, and they're getting taken to like some kind of reform school, and he's like stuck in the jail, and then he like escapes, and then before you know whatever happens again to him, there's like a freeze frame. Well, we know from later films that actually the Antoine Donnell cycle, and that's the kid is played by, I can't remember his name, but the point is Antoine Donnell is a character in that film, The 400 Blows, and Jean-Pierre Léaud, there you go, plays him in each of the upcoming movies, which later on, he's older in like Bed and Board. And it's weird that it's called Bed and Board, because there's a Bed and Board of a Russia tale, like a love triangle, Bed and Board. And you know that the one for, the Bed and Board for Antoine Donnell cycle was kind of about a threesome too, so you're kind of getting weary about the fact that this movie's about this movie, but it's actually from this movie. And so 400 Blows, if you take it independently, as it won the Cannes Film Festival in 1959, when they first even started Cannes, when they had all those Cinematheque gatherings for these new French New Wave films, and boing, you get 400 Blows. And 400 Blows is this incredible masterpiece even today. The way it's filmed is so beautiful that you can't help but look at it and stare at it and say, this is the technique I've always been, like, dreaming of. It's Francois Truffaut's 400 Blows. So, see, we just dissected a movie and found out what we liked about it, and that's what film criticism does. And I don't even remember if 400 Blows is in film criticism. I know I had talked about it in terms of being the year of Breathless, 400 Blows, and Hiroshima Mon Amour, when the French New Wave really took over in 1959. And it went until about 1967 with Godard's Weekend. Godard crashed it so hard that he crashed the whole French New Wave forever. You know, it's like now nobody's going to have a budget to do anything because I spent it all on Weekend. And Weekend is one mess of a movie found on a trash dump. That's what it says in the movie. This movie was found on a trash dump. Well, that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I mean, you could find a movie on a trash dump and particularly have it be a good movie. I mean, I don't know how many movies I found on a trash dump. I think what he's saying is, like, somehow Weekend is so bad that it's the greatest. It's so bad that it's the greatest, you know. I dig it for that because it kind of has this naivety to it. Now when we look back and say, no, the so bad it's the greatest has gone on since... you know, before Ed Wood, even so bad it's the greatest, you know. And that's a Weekend does remind me of one of those so bad, so terrible movie, it's the greatest. And anyway, I wanted to let you know that I think that now that we have it behind us, in another course I taught, which was on D.W. Griffith, and we've all understood as far as we could on the subject matter, good old D.W. Griffith. And I think we've gone down that path far enough to say this is where we stand with it. If we've seen some of the movies and done some of the reading and, you know, seen Musketeers of Pig Alley a couple of times, and then look at Edwin S. Porter's Great Train Robbery, and look at A Trip to the Moon by George Méliès, there's clips to look at that we've been delivering, that we have clips to say these are the ones we want you to see for sure, you know. And so then you start to get a sense of how Griffith developed the language of cinema since the beginning of the cinema history, which he didn't come into it really till, what, 1909, and it was already gone since 1895, so it's like, we never really talked about the class, like, the 15 years before Griffith and what they did. You know, we talked a little bit about how the 15 years before Griffith, how he was an actor in the theater, and how that started it all out. But what even started before that? Why did he go to acting? What was it that made him? Was he just interested in theater because he saw a few plays in his small southern town that he wanted to be an actor? So then all of a sudden he notices that actors are going into Hollywood and their stunt doubles are being born, and he wants to do that. I mean, where's the induction there that really, I mean, we never talked about that. Is, oh, he just used to be an actor, and oh, he was in some early cinema, and then he suddenly became a director because he thought that was a better idea than an actor. You know, we never really followed that progression, but it was kind of a, I'm coming whether it's time or not, because I want to direct movies, I want to direct plays, I want to direct, you know, he just wanted to be a director. That he had to come up as an actor, which John Ford did too around the same time, okay? It was in some D.W. Griffith movies later, like Birth of a Nation. John Ford all comes running up as a Klansman. Yeah, that's going to give you real tidy respect later in your career when no one really knows which side anybody was really on, since it was white people that were wearing the black face. I want you to know that wasn't really black people. And I don't know if I'm saying that the wrong way or if this is coming out wrong or whatever, but, like, I pretty much got the sense that the film was full of BS. Most films are full of BS when they try and represent, like, different races in film, unless they're really pondering the subject, like, in a philosophical way. And so, like, philosophical ways can be equalitarian because you're studying the subject from all the same blanks that you would the other subject. which means there could be no racial barrier, that race wouldn't make any sense as a barrier, considering that's not really where you get the characteristics of how you live your life in every case. It doesn't just come from like your race, class, and gender, which is important, and I know, white guy alert, like I'm a white guy, so I don't know what everybody goes through that isn't in my race, but that's just the way it is. I mean, like, I'm not going to preach to you some subject about, like, what you should choose in life, about what you believe, dude. I'm just teaching you what you need to know to get by in school, because in school, you do need to know that there is no actual race code in school. You can't say, well, like, trust me, I'm on the Board of Education. There's nobody that's going to tell you black students are not as good as white students. That's ridiculous. Everybody knows that everybody's as good as everybody else as a student, and who wants to be the best student can be the best student. But also, I gotta say that, like, you're not just judged by whether you're good or bad as a student if you're black or white. Come on. Now, that's ridiculous. And I'm sure there are some people that really think that teachers do that, but they don't. They're not allowed to. I mean, it's obvious if they are judging someone for being black rather than being a student. And so, sorry, academia is smarter than y'all. You don't have to go there and ask them for your forgiveness, because, hey, I respectively will atone for my own criticism if it goes too far, as I have. Now, I don't think I have to get on the subject of, like, I would do anything to remain with my fellow critics, and anything to remain with my fellow. And I'm talking about academic critics, and academic critics are far more researchive and far more influential to the medium itself. So to be an academic critic would be much better. I'm not trying to take any, like, entertainment critic away. That's why we're talking about, like, what criticism is writing about film, writing about art, writing about the thing that criticism is about, writing about the criticism, writing about the criticism. And so it's like how being a film critic means that you should be a critical thinker about what makes the film good. And when you're arguing what makes a film good, a lot of times you're like, well, beautiful visuals, or like complicated narratives, or like long elongated shots which go deep into the background, or like kicking down a wall that's in the way because it's like behind it there's treasure, or you could figure all these things out. Like the spaceship takes off and lands on the moon. I mean, it's beautiful, dude. I mean, what can you say about the monolith freezes in between the planets as it's rising very slightly in the star-filled sky? I mean, there are things that make movies great, man. Not just the way it's written and the way it's composed and acted. But, so I don't want to lose my credibility in that crowd, so I'm not just going to say D.W. Griffith rules, and I'm going to stick by that. There are other great things about other directors. So now we're going to the other end of the spectrum. I won't talk for much longer on this subject right now, but we're going to go from D.W. Griffith. All right, we have the establishment of film, and we never even talked about how he went from theater to actor, and then how we take back what we say, not in terms of meaning it, in terms of conscious narrative between human to human, but in criticism speak. That is like what makes this a great movie, and we know that some of those movies that are great movies have certain failures, but then we go all the way to the other end of the spectrum to complete perfection, Quentin Tarantino. And we're not going to say anything bad about any of the films that he made as well, because none of them are bad. None of them, to me, have any problems whatsoever. I think they have maybe language gaps that some people are like, well, that's a language gap for me because I don't like that word. But it's like, well, you might have to get used to that in some societies and forms of, like, like where you're going, depending on what you're doing. If you're watching only movies and you're watching everybody's movies and everybody's got a right to say what they want in the movie, and then you kind of get to the point where you're like offended by it too, because only certain people can do like offensive things in movies, offensive language in movies. And here I am again, I'm like, no offensive language. You know, it's like me waving the stick, but like, I'm not saying what's better, what's worse about language. You could go and figure that all out for yourself about what language is even. But if you're offended and we're talking about it, then there's probably some reason that word was in the film, mainly so that later we'd be sitting there going, I wonder what reason was in there. And just that thinking on different like planes of the way the film plays out, then you're like already starting to go, well, now I'm really thinking about this movie. Now I wonder what was really going on in that movie. I have to like decipher it, you know, the right way forward. It's like you have to re-edit Pulp Fiction in your own mind while you're watching it to understand what the linearity is from beginning to end. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see the whole point. How can you re-edit a movie that is edited forward the way it goes? It's edited forward the way it goes, but we all know it happens in a different order. How do we do that? We'll find out next semester. So. And then, of course, we talk about the qualities that got us here, and I'm like, well, you know, I could talk real fast about that. I made this movie called Oedipus Marshall, and I made this movie called Shadow of Death, and I made this movie called Rut, all at the same time. And ever since, I've been making like 3 movies a year. Some movies were tired and slow, and some movies were fast and furious, and this one looks to be like both of the other, because we've come to the most recent movie of my career, which is The Long Lonely Walk to the Dispensary. The Long Lonely Walk to the Dispensary, I think it's called. And it's a good one. It's like this guy walks, boom, gets to the dispensary, and then it goes off camera, and then it comes back to part 2. And it's like, he gets out, he smokes, and he walks, back to where he goes. It's like, that's a funny movie, man. I don't know what you got to say, because you can't see him in the dispensary, which is like everybody's bummer, because they want to see what it looks like inside. You can see him smoke in all sorts of scenes, and then he gets stoned as heck on the way back. It's just like, not even a frivolous gesture anymore of how that's the whole, like, what everybody's looking forward to seeing is him actually smoking the weed, you know. And then he gets back to the place he started, and the car's gone, and he's waiting there forever, and it never shows up. And you're like, you know, the film goes, edits out into darkness, and then you're just like, okay, so that was a long, lonely walk, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you back up to like my other, and then I had, you know, 2 other films that year, like Lazy Smoker, which I'm not even going to discuss anymore, because I'm so ridiculed over Lazy Smoker right now. Like, it's such a big fan favorite all over the world, you know. It was like this big, famous, worldwide success, you know. It was like, oh, come on now. That movie couldn't be very famous. And I'm like, well, everybody's seen it, dude. Like, the internet told me the other day that everybody's seen it on the internet. So, you know, I'm like, yeah, I thought so. So, I'm like, well, thank you, but you go back to those other films like Shadow of Death and Oedipus Marshall, and those are even better, if not greater, movies that were making with greater directors at the time, and great thinkers and philosophers. And there's some years where you're just doing psychology documentaries, and later I was able to give those to UCLA and make a deal with them that they could have my psychology documentaries, because it was well-driven information. I just couldn't keep on the subject myself. And so you see, like, we have the technique of teaching these kind of classes. We talked about 400 Blows, Pulp Fiction. You know, it's like, we were just in a few minutes here talking about the exciting nature of what makes art beautiful. And I think that what makes art beautiful is not just that there's a stroke of the brush, but that the paint leaves that same stroke of brush technique behind and leaves it permanently. Art will never die. I mean, like, this is a subject that, you know, sometimes people may doubt that I have like all extra degrees and that like I've got insight into some areas that could help them in film and help them get a job in cinema career, you know. But instead of bragging about myself or like trying to list all my friends that are like, well, we got you there, so we'll keep you there, don't worry about it, we were just messing with you, that kind of thing is cool too in academia. The bro code at Sigma Nu is cool, that I'm a Sigma Nu fraternity member for the last years, you know, and that they're always helping me out. And they're really cool. And then, you know, Harvard, they're a really cool club to be in, you know, not just starting the movie club over there that I did, but from the time that the professors in college told me I'd have to go and get that degree to the time later when I figured out the quantum physics, the mechanics thereof. And the mechanics thereof of quantum physics really saved my ass at Harvard, because I knew I had a theory for them that was new somewhere, and I couldn't find my old new theory. But I had it in there somewhere, and I boxed it up and hippogrammed it over to them, and I thought, what do you think? And they're like, it's worth it, man. Now you're just going to need 3 more books published with real publishers and turned in as your dissertation, and we'll consider you for the last round of Harvard representation. And I just turned around and gave him this music CD that was a rock CD that I did. I thought, this will be the perfect masters. And guess what? It was the perfect masters. So, you turn some in, you get them right, you get them done. You get what you get out of the end of it. I'm not competing with anybody. I don't know who all has more degrees than I do or who has less. And I'm definitely not trying to get more now that I have enough to go back to and say, well, I've got to keep track of it here with this degree and such. But now that I've got it, my writing ability is able to reach wherever I want it to go to. Yesterday, I wrote an article for The Onion, for instance, and I can write for pretty much whoever I want to now. And what I want to do is this master class, and that's what it took a long way to get around to that. But anyway, this master class is what I want to do. I mean, these detailed classes about writers, authors, we can do in the future, you know, screenwriting, or a class on filmmaking itself where I can teach you the basic logistics of how to make a film. I mean, we've got options here. We're barely scratching the surface with how to research a film, how to write about a film that you think is a beautiful artwork, and how to prove it's a beautiful artwork, or at least prove by explanation, you know, that something is a beautiful artwork. So, and I don't think it takes a long time to consider whether you think a film is a beautiful thing by the way it's shot. I think that comes out real fast in a human. But then to explain all that is what we teach in criticism, to explain why art is beautiful. And not just why art is beautiful, but aesthetics, what aesthetics mean in philosophical terms. Not just ontologically, but like phenomenologically and epistemologically. Like the way you think and the way you have knowledge already assessed. You know, you're all after the fact in one mode and before the fact in the other. A priori, before the fact. It was already there before the fact. So anyways, we're not going to talk much more. I just wanted to get into that. We're only going to do a couple more of these before December 27th when we start the Tarantino class. And if you took the film criticism classes, and if you took the class in the summer on special effects, and if you took the Griffith class, and you turned in your essay on each of those finals, and I'm not going to go into again what the finals all were, but you can find those on the last episodes of each class that is on my Doctor of the Arts page on YouTube. You can find all of the episodes there in that playlist, the Doctor of the Arts YouTube Masterclass playlist. You know, you can find it all there. And that's a good place to go. And so to find the finals. And then if you've turned in all your papers and you've taken all the classes, you're still getting credit for these classes. Like, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, and you took this class, and I find proof that that you turned in a paper somewhere, you just meet me personally and say I turned in the paper or whatever, then I'll believe you. We'll be cool. You'll get the credit. And then it will have all seemed worth it, because if you get the credit for the class, then it goes towards your major or just like an elective is the word I was looking for originally. You can take it as an elective, and then how many of these courses you can take. Well, you can always accrue Coursera credit, and if you talk to the schools with the Coursera credit, then yeah, they'll give you credit for one of those three, or however you want to break the credit down into the USC, Calarts, and Harvard paradigm, which we've given you option 4. It's a little tricky how we did that, but mainly we made it so that those courses would be amplified, that they did the Coursera, whereas there are quite a few other schools that will take Coursera credit just for this class. So we're just kind of acknowledging that they were some of the ones that did take credit for this class. It's kind of tricky the way we did that. Anyway, it doesn't matter, because there's other classes that would have taken this as credit course and do. I'm not sure who they all are. Maybe Boulder. I don't know. CMU might give you credit for these classes. I don't know. I don't know if CMU still looks at these. Some do, some don't. Colorado Mesa University, I don't know. They might watch everything you do and have a big file on you. At one school's like, well, he wrote that poem I really liked that was in the middle of his book, so we're fine. All right, but yeah, like I said, you still get credit for the classes, and we're still going to teach. We're still going to be teaching classes on into the future. This is only year 2. Nobody stump out on me. We're going to be fine. All right, thanks, man. Talk to you guys. Two more YouTube masterclasses interms before a few days after Christmas when we start back up, okay? So hang in there. I'm still here. Everything's fine. I'm going to go get stoned. Everything's cool. All right.